Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 155. If you're just creative, you'll always have to rely on technical people. If you're creative and technical, you're unstoppable. Robert Rodriguez.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by Video Blocks. Now, if you guys are looking for stock footage, After Effects templates, motion graphics, Video Blocks is the site, man. I've been using them for years now. I use some clips of theirs in my movie This Is Meg for some stock footage. And this month alone, they're launching a new crazy collection of hundreds of new Unreal clips, including space, virtual reality, deep water, fantasy, and sci-fi footage. All of that comes free with your subscription, and it is a limited time. And you also get free 4K clips with your membership at no cost. And Video Blocks is now giving you 7 days of free downloads. Download a ton of stuff for free. Check it out, see what's going on with it. And remember, whatever you download during those 7 days is yours for free, royalty-free forever. So definitely give them a shot. So head over to videoblocks.com/indie, I-N-D-I-E. That's videoblocks.com/indie. Today's show is also sponsored by Digital Box Office. Now, Digital Box Office is a global provider of streaming movies, television, and all sorts of original content. DBO provides a dramatic new opportunity for indie filmmakers to gain previously unavailable global exposure and valuable analytics. Now, the service is going to be a data mine for Hollywood and for indie filmmakers, as Digital Box Office users are required to vote on the content that they watch on the platform via DBO's proprietary single one-click voting model. Now, you can submit your film today at upload.digitalboxoffice.tv, and you can browse their current selection at www.digitalboxoffice.tv. You can also download the app for iOS or Android at the Google Play and Apple App Store. So today on the show, guys, we have Sevier Crespo, line producer extraordinaire. A lot of you guys out there might have not had the experience of using a line producer on your productions. Generally, when you're an indie filmmaker, you don't have the budget to hire a good line producer. But as your budgets grow, you really do need a good line producer, because basically line producers just get stuff done. They're the guys who are the ones hiring the crew, putting things together, figuring out how to squeeze penny out of every dollar that you can and get the most bang for your buck. They're the guys who have the connections with the vendors, with crew, trying to make you deals with locations. That's who the line producer is, and they are an integral part of any professional film crew. And a lot of you guys have reached out to me asking me, hey, Alex, can you please do an episode on what the heck's a line producer? Because they're confusing. And, you know, there's so many different producers on a feature film, from the main producer to executive producer, co-producer, associate producer, line producer. There's so many different kind of producers out there. But that line producer is the guy who gets everything done. He or she is the one that pushes and greases the wheels to get this production done. So I wanted to have Sevier Crespo on because he's a line producer who's not a guy who works on $100 million movies. He's a guy who works on indie projects. And there is a very big distinction on that, because if you hire a line producer who's worked on big studio movies, they are not going to know those tricks of the trade to get the most bang for your buck in an indie world. What you have to pay for and what you don't have to pay for, and things like that. Well, so I wanted Steve on because he lives in the low budget indie world. You know, he actually saved a $250,000 movie $60,000 just by doing his job and doing it well. And he goes over all of that. And did I mention that he also worked with Jerry Bruckheimer, Michael Mann, Joe Pytka, and also studied under Robert Townsend, the legendary director of Hollywood Shuffle. I mean, he's got some stories, and we definitely go over it in this, like from the craziest Joe Pytka story you've ever heard. And well, if you don't know who Joe Pytka is, you will know who Joe Pytka is by the end of this episode. But Jerry Bruckheimer and working with Michael Mann and how they work together, how Ridley Scott he worked with Ridley Scott and Tony Scott, and how they worked together. Samuel Bayer, who's a huge commercial director, and he worked with him as well. So he's definitely learned from some of the best people in the industry, and he has a ton of stuff to talk about and share with you guys. Sevier lays down some major knowledge bombs, so I hope you guys get a ton of knowledge out of this episode. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Sevier Crespo. I'd like to welcome to the show Sevier Crespo. Thank you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. I've been wanting to have someone of your skill set on the show because we haven't really tackled it. Out of 153 episodes that we've been, as of right now, as of this recording, 153, 154 episodes, we have not tackled line producing and kind of your skill set. So I'm very excited to talk to you and hopefully drop some knowledge bombs on the tribe.
Oh, wow. Well, the pleasure is all mine, and now I feel like
the pressure's on.
I'm in the spotlight. The pressure's on.
The pressure's on, man. But there's no pressure in the film business, so you should be fine. It's super easy, right? You just wake up and go, I'm going to be in the business, and things happen, right? Doors open, money gets thrown at you. It's that's the 80s.
Yeah, right. Well, you know what? That's perfect. That's exactly how it is. So, I
don't even know why people are listening to this. It's just so easy. You don't need any help. So let me ask you, how'd you get in the business in the first place?
Well, interesting. I got into the business from the acting side. Mm-hmm. A funny story. I wanted to be a professional baseball player, being Puerto Rican and everything.
I was going to say, isn't that a prerequisite? I'm Cuban, so I was thrown into on the diamond as well. And it was horrible. I was horrible at it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was pretty good. I was pretty good. And but needless to say, I didn't make the baseball team twice, which was a very interesting, odd thing growing up here when I got to the States from Puerto Rico. So then I had to find a slot to fill my baseball period in the morning. Mm-hmm. And the only thing available that I didn't want to do that had to do with study was theater.
Okay.
So I said, okay, great. I'll take theater class in the morning. And so then I took theater, and the first time I got on stage, it changed my life. I was like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. Uh-huh. And so I was hooked instantly. And so then from there, I continued acting classes and acting career. And then I moved to Los Angeles. And when I got to Los Angeles, I had the fortunate, opportunity of meeting with Robert Townsend. And that's kind of
for people who don't know who Robert Townsend is. Can you please tell them who he is?
Yeah, Robert Townsend is one of the great legendary producers, filmmaker, writer, director, filmmakers. He did Hollywood Shuffle, which was
if I remember, Hollywood Shuffle was the first movie that was kind of done super. I mean, not the first movie, but it was the one that got the most press because he used credit cards to make it.
That's correct. He used from the story. He would tell us he used. I believe at the time there was a Sears card. There was, he used all of possible cards. Not only cash, he used cards that had appliances from Sears, there was quite a few other stores that are no longer available, but you're correct. He used everything and anything on credit cards to make the movie.
And that movie was about, like, if I'm not mistaken, it was like $250,000. It wasn't like $50,000. It was like a $200,000 or something like that. If memory serves me correct, it was. And also for everyone listening, this is the 80s when he did this, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's correct. So it was the 80s.
It was not easy being an independent filmmaker in the 80s.
No, not at all. I don't even think it was even, like you said earlier, I think in the 80s, the money was there and available, and it was different times. Mm-hmm. So if you weren't getting it up front or someone was giving it to you, to just do it on your own was not anything that anyone even thought about. Because remember, there was shooting on film.
It was so damn expensive. Exactly. So you meet with this legend, and what do you learn from Robert?
The one thing I learned from Robert, the first thing was you better love what you do. Mm-hmm. And his level of energy was something I had never experienced ever in any field, in any part of life or career. He was constantly full of energy, loved what he did, always ready to tackle the situation or whatever we were working on or doing. And from there out, then we learned, story and character and what it takes to really do a film with what you have, and some of the things that he discussed were, look, if you're doing a low budget film or an independent movie, start with what's free. What can you get for free? And then what do you have to pay for? And so that was a very interesting point of view. I'm like, okay, well, including things that you would have in your house, for example, when you go to acting class and you have a scene to put up in class, you pretty much drag everything you have from your house to create your set on stage, right? And I think it was a kind of point of view or mentality when working on a film. It was like, okay, well, not just what's in your house, but what's in other people's house that you can use or that works for what you're filming on your film. So it was that process first, and then what do you have to pay for? And then also be realistic about what you're working on with what you have, which is still encounter today. A lot of people give me a script and they're like, hey, here's a script. Can you do a budget, or can you schedule this for me, or can we do it for a certain amount of dollars? And the first thing, reading through it is like, man, you have a car chase in the highway and one of the cars flips over. I don't understand. Like, come on, help me out here. Help me help you.
Yeah, I've had many of those encounters in my career with scripts. Sure with the script, they give you an action script. They're like, I think we could do it for $100,000. I'm like, guys, you need 60 days to shoot this thing.
Exactly.
And you have 2 days of budget.
Right. That's exactly it. And I think that was it. I think his point of view was, be realistic about what it is you're making and what it is you have. And also, I learned a lot about story and character development. And I really realized how far that will take you. And it's like, don't underestimate character and story in your audience and what they're looking for. Because a lot of times, especially now, everything's these big blockbuster films, which are fantastic and are entertaining. But if you don't have $100 million or $10 million or $20 million, you can tell the same story from what I've learned and what I was taught, with not necessarily all the bells and whistles. So I think that was the main thing. So, really character and story development, and also not thinking that you need a zillion locations to tell your story.
Yeah, that's one big mistake. A lot of young guys and girls who try to be filmmakers, they try to shoot at 50 different locations, and most of the times all within the same day. And
yes.
Oh God! Please, everyone who's listening right now, I'm going to give them one piece of advice. Don't do more than 1 or 2 company moves in a day. If you can help it, try not to do any company moves in a day, because you kill your day.
Which is interesting that you're saying that, because the last film I just got back from shooting in Puerto Rico, we literally had 2 company moves a day.
Oh God, it must have been brutal. If it's down the street, it's different, but if it's 20, 30-minute drives, come on.
It's brutal. It's
brutal.
It's definitely, the days off were well needed. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, because when you do that, you basically got to pack up the circus and move. Yeah. And it takes time to pack up the circus and move and then reset the circus back up. It's brutal. Now, but you could do something like that, I guess, with a skeleton crew. Everyone jumps into the van and let's just go. That might be different.
Yeah. I think for me, what I had to do was I really had to plan ahead of time a lot. I really had to, with the first and second ADs, plan out the routes, plan out by when we would wrap one location to move on to the next. ideally the breaks would be right after lunch, right? So we'd start breakfast through lunch at one location, wrap that out, and give us an extra 45 minutes to an hour. And a lot of tech scouts with the DP and the director and the first AD and the second AD at all the locations prior, and really measuring the sun and the lighting and the lights and doing a pre walkthrough of what they were thinking, which helped a lot. So it wasn't like everybody went in blindly to every location. There was at least somewhat of a skeleton of an idea.
Right. Exactly. Now you're actually, you came in from the acting standpoint, and as you know as very well as I do, being an actor in LA it's not an easy gig. It's a tough gig, to say the least.
It is a tough gig. It can be definitely a tough gig. It's from my point of view, it's a very fickle. It can be very fickle in a way because you don't know what people are expecting, and from moment to moment, it can change. 1 minute we want all blah, the next minute we want all blah, and it's very fickle.
But the thing is, I think you did something similar that I did. Was my main goal was to be a director, but while I was going after my directing goals, I got into post-production. So I think from what it sounds like, you wanted to be an actor, but then you also started picking up all these other tools to put in your toolbox that can actually keep you surviving and alive during your journey to get acting roles. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. That's true. I got tired of I've done so many different jobs in this town. I've been a janitor, or catering. I mean, you name it. I'm sure you can 100% relate to all of it. And I think when I met Robert, I really started to like the process of producing, and I felt like I had something there. And actually, when I learned and got into the line producing aspect of it, I like numbers. The one thing about numbers that I think was totally opposite of the acting. Numbers are predictable. You can predict numbers. You can actually, they don't really lie. See, numbers never lie. It's like there's so many unknown factors that sometimes you can just leave a room or walk out of a situation not knowing what they want. I mean, there's times where I nailed it. And
yeah, right.
And times where you're like, oh my God, I bombed. And then you're like, you booked it. And so it's so I think that, on the producing end, and especially line producing, that wasn't the case. I was able to always find the why. So I think that, and I loved it, actually. I found it interesting, and I still do, to take something from a concept, then someone writes it, and then you put numbers to it, and then you put it into existence, and eventually you're watching it in a theater.
Yes, and that is a long journey.
It is a very long journey. A very long journey, and I've also learned, these are your babies. I look at them.
Yeah.
It's like they're like children. It's you give birth to something, and you live with it. I think people sometimes forget the amount of time that you live with a film. It's for years.
Oh, it's. I mean, I'm living with short films. I mean, they're all babies. Some are ugly, some are some are gorgeous, and some you just love no matter who or what anyone says. Right. And that's what an artist does.
That is what we do. That is what we do. And the good, the bad, and the ugly, they're still yours. And I think only those that have fully done a film, or even a TV show, or a pilot, or a web series, or anything of that sort, even a music video or a commercial, for crying out loud, there's a respect. Because, man, it's a process, and you have a team of people that count on you. You count on them, and it's so, to some degree, you find the beauty in all of them because of the brutal blood, sweat, and tears that goes in.
God, yes. And then sometimes you're just like, I'm so done. I'm so glad that's over with, and I never want to look at that project again. I at least have one of those that I'm just like,
Oh.
I don't even know why I did that. What was I thinking? So now,
Yeah.
so after doing some research on you, sir, I found out that you got to learn from some amazing people, specifically Ridley Scott and Michael Mann, the legends. What was it like learning and being, just picking up things from those guys?
You definitely realize and learn why they are where they're at and why their careers are their careers and what they've accomplished. Definitely two things that I picked up was they're so different,
Oh, yeah.
they're totally different, but yet both fantastic, in how they work. One experience that I had with Michael Mann was, and this is like at midnight, Friday.
So that, by the way, that's the best way a story starts. I was with Michael Mann at midnight on a Friday. That's a great start to a story.
Well, yeah. And I was actually on my way home from working, in the office with them and on pre-production on a job, and then I get a call. Hey, Michael wants you to come back. You got to come back and continue doing some more work on the storyboard thing. And so I was like, okay. I turned around, went back, and it was interesting because I had to piece together the storyboard for these shots. And he shot everything with a camera and then printed out all the photos and everything. And I was supposed to lay everything out according to the storyboard and how he wanted everything. And I remember at one point thinking, I have no idea what I'm looking at. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't even understand one frame, one photo from the other. This is all the same. Like, my mind was already losing it. Mm-hmm. But yet they were able to come in and go, well, no, this is different from this one because of this. And look at this. And I promise you, it was the most minute things that I even to this day, when I think about it, I'm like, wow, that was so specific. But yet that's why he is who he is. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How about Ridley?
And Ridley, there was always there was a calm to him and his communication, and I found him to be good with actors, and people. One thing that I learned on that end was the crew. Mm-hmm. On that end, if they use the same people over and over again, they worked with the same people. Everybody knew each other. There was a very team point of view, if you will. Which again, at the time, I didn't really fully understand until then I started really producing and line producing and doing projects where I realized, how you go from crew to crew, or certain people are not available, and you test people out, and some work, some don't, some can cause a little bit more of a problem, some are fantastic. And that was that point. I finally realized, oh, no wonder it was very difficult to, they use the same people over and over again, because right. Standard of filmmaking, a standard of quality, even for me to come in, I was supposed to only be there with them for a week. And I ended up staying there longer than that. But even just that process for a few days, I didn't get the job right off the bat. I had to be vetted in.
Mm-hmm. It's like the mob. You need to have someone to go, he's a good fella. He can come in.
Exactly. And then, you think you're done and you hope you didn't embarrass yourself. And the next thing you know, it's like, hey, we like this kid. We're going to keep him. And I think that was pretty exciting. And those
are the things that happen when you live in LA. I mean, because I'm from Miami, you're from Puerto Rico. I know you grew up in Texas, but like you can't get that kind of exposure unless you're here. Sometimes.
Exactly. No, that's true. I mean, here is where everybody is the base for everyone. So you're able to have that privilege and be lucky. And I feel like there's some in my career that's something that I can say I'm very grateful for. Robert Townsend and Ridley Scott and Michael Mann. It's pretty wowing.
Now, you also did a lot of commercial work as well, right?
I did. I ended up, I've worked at RSA, Radical Media, Anonymous Content. So I was able to work on worked on the Green Day videos, Wake Me Up When September Ends. I worked on a lot of big global commercials. I was trained by some pretty fantastic producers that, worked on global projects regularly, which was a very eye-opening experience as well. One to date was when we had to do a commercial that shot in China, France, London, and I believe even the U.S. all within a 2-week span.
And it's just business as usual for them.
It is. It really, really, really is. And I think, I was lucky enough to have them. Sometimes I would sit in the room. Even they would say, Sevier, sit over here and listen how this is going to go. Or they would say, if it was a phone conference or a call, they'd say, if a client or someone was being a little difficult or they were being specific and certain things weren't very accommodating, they would say, tell me, this is how we're going to handle this. Watch. And that's kind of, it was probably some of the most valuable information that I was able to take in, and I think that's what helped me move into as a line producer over to the film and TV side. Because when you're working in the commercial world and even music video world, when you do a bid and it gets awarded, that's what that is. You really can't go back and say, by the way, guys, I underestimated.
No, not with commercials and music videos. That's where I got started as well in the Miami market, doing commercials and music videos. So I remember that time. Like, you can't just go, yeah, we were about 10,000 under here. I'm like, nope, it's tough. The production company is going to eat it now.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, and actually you coming from that world as well, then, things have to be specific or you won't work very long.
No,
you have to be as close as possible. And usually any overages, come from the clients and their needs at the last minute, which that's acceptable and they deal with it on their end. But you as the production team, you can't come back and say, yeah, about that, we lied or we underestimated or anything like that.
That's why you always have to, when dealing in commercial budgets, you always got to kind of pad everything just for that specific time when the client goes, I really want that helicopter shot now.
Yes.
But we didn't budget a helicopter shot. I know, but I want one. And all of a sudden you're like, son of a, well, I'm glad we padded those other departments.
Right. And those conversations, it's like, oh my God, because it sounds like I want a helicopter shot. Because you're like, yeah, we got a helicopter, we got the fuel, we got the pilot, we got the permits, we got where are we flying this thing, we got, it's just like, and when you start painting the picture for them, hopefully, you want them to go, oh yeah, maybe not, and sometimes they're like, yeah, let's go for it.
So that's a great segue to my next question. You've worked with the infamous and legendary Joe Pytka.
Yes, I have.
So for everybody who did you hear his voice, audience? Did you hear his voice change when I said it's like saying Voldemort or Kaiser Sose? Joe, for everyone who doesn't know who Joe Pytka is, Joe Pytka is probably one of the greatest commercial directors of all time. He's also legendary for being difficult, possibly sometimes. You don't have to say, just nod yes or no. I don't want you to get in trouble.
It's interesting because what I learned from Joe, and what I learned from Joe, because Joe also I don't even recall him ever going into overtime, shooting late. We always wrapped around the same time every time. He always served second meal to the crew, even if we didn't need it or whatnot. So I found that to be awesome.
Nice.
Like, regardless of how he operated on set and his own personal points of views and quirkiness or whatnot, he always delivered great product. You knew what you were going to get with him. And I think that was a strong kind of principle that I even use to this day, believe it or not. That it's something that I learned and I put in my toolkit, because I was like, that's something very valuable, and it shows respect for your crew and appreciation for your crew, regardless if he didn't verbally say anything or said it otherwise.
So can you tell us what the best or craziest story, Joe Pytka story, that you're able to say publicly?
Let's see. Craziest.
Because I've been on sets, and every time I hear somebody like, yeah, I work with Joe, I go, so what's the story? And everyone always, it's like that. It's kind of like that. He's almost like an urban legend, Joe.
Yes.
He's almost like an urban, because we all have stories. If you've worked with him, you all have these stories. And I've heard hundreds of stories from different crew guys who've worked with him over the years, and they're just the best stories ever. So I wanted to see if you had one.
I think, this is one that I remember because it was, it was summertime, and I believe we were working on, I believe it was one of the Clydesdales Budweiser commercials for the Super Bowl. And, Joe always does second meal, and he has a specific type of pizza that he would like and things like that. So I remember we were shooting in the valley, which is in the summertime, I believe. I don't remember exactly. It's extremely, extremely hot.
That's where I live.
Yeah. And I remember we had to go find a place that I believe he approved the pizza, because it couldn't just be from anywhere. So I remember getting in a 15-pass van with, I believe, one or two more PAs and getting all of this pizza. And I remember having to wait for the pizzas to get done, and then we had a special warmer for his pizza. And I remember, because we were so petrified, because if the pizza showed up cold, especially his,
done.
It was like, just run, just go home. So I remember sitting in this 15-pass van with just boxes and boxes of pizza, with the heater on. I had the heater full blast. I'm so scared that they were going to show up cold. And I'm melting, just waiting for his pizza to be done. And I'm thinking, man, my life has to get better than this. And yeah, that was one of the stories with Joe.
Now, the thing is, so everyone listening, you're like, this is just an extreme story. I'm like, no, it's not.
No.
This is business as usual on bigger sets, or depending on the personalities of, it could be a producer, it could be a director. I mean, I have stories. I mean, I helped move a freaking producer when I was an intern at Universal Studios in Florida. Like things like that you drive 2 hours to move. I mean, it's seriously, but just to understand, once you get in the business, this is what you're going to deal with. Do you agree?
100%. Oh God, yes. And I pray for anyone coming into the business that you dodge a lot of those scenarios.
Yeah, sure.
Luckily, I have to say the scenarios that I've had to deal with still were around fantastic, talented, legendary people that I at least got something out of. I've heard horror stories where people don't get anything out of it except just being fired or
abused.
Just a really terrible experience where they end up leaving the business. So
yeah, at least, I mean, if you're gonna get a crap job, it's good to have it on a Joe Pytka set, or Ridley Scott set, or a Michael Mann set.
Right. Yeah.
It's not too bad.
It's not. And listen, I mean, when I worked on the set with Michael Mann, it was an interesting thing because, Michael Mann will shoot and shoot and shoot, and then nothing's ready or done or move on until he says so. He feels he's gotten the shot or comfortable or anything along those lines. So at one point, I had the producer was like, listen, I need you to help me find the footage or the hard drive of where things are being kept, because it was being hidden. So our producers on our end had no idea where things that he was shooting was being kept. Because he would keep it private and hidden, so only he knew when he was ready to move on. And so, here I am being told, listen, I need you to make friends with his assistant, which we ended up becoming buddies and actually friends. But it was like, hey, I need you to find out where this footage is. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, I don't even know where to start with that. Like, now I became a spy within the set to figure out where, the footage was being kept so we could look at it.
Jeez. So
it's,
these. I mean, we could go on for hours with these stories. I mean, it's absolutely. So, can you do me a favor? Can you break down what a line producer does for the audience?
Yes, a line producer's job, and what they do is they take the content, usually a script, and they break it down line by line, meaning how much is catering going to cost approximately, locations, gear, permits, any picture cards, the amount of extras, the amount of talent, and we pretty much go through the whole script. We break everything down according to what we feel the budget is, and it's going to take to make the project. Usually it's broken down, or I like to break it down into 3 areas or levels. One is ideal, one is comfortable, and the other one no way lower than this. So it's producers, we budget the film, every aspect of it. We figure out how much it's going to cost for union fringes, SAG, AFTRA, WGA, DGA,
mm-hmm.
All of those elements that then, wardrobe, hair and makeup, props, set dressing, and then how long it's going to take approximately to shoot, and then budget it within those days.
Now, I have heard a lot of times, and just so you can tell the audience a little bit, a UPM and a line producer sometimes are interchangeable, correct?
They are. This is a kind of a tricky one,
right?
Because they kind of have the same position. One of them's PGA, one of them's DGA.
Right.
On TV shows, on union shows, bigger union films, you can kind of carry both.
Mm-hmm.
Or they usually carry both. And it's an interesting thing because they do the same things for the most part overall. It would depend on the executive producers and the project that you're on that then, dictates whether you need one or the other or both.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So now I also read in your in my research of you that you saved the film $60,000. They were $60,000 in the hole with a budget of $225, and you brought the film on budget and on schedule. Can you please break that down for us?
Oh God. Well, it's interesting because people that worked on that film with me to this day still call me the general. I kind of came in, and I didn't make very much. I didn't make any friends on that film because I wasn't the nicest, and I think it's because just morally and ethically, I was pretty bummed out, and I was a little upset on how they could have gone, negative $60,000. And mind you, this was approximately prior to starting principal photography. Okay, because the director / producer had paid himself like $20,000. He flew in a hair and makeup person for $6,000.
Oh Jesus!
Like from Texas. Like there was all these elements that were like, we're in Los Angeles, California. You telling me you flew someone in
for makeup
from Texas for makeup? Like or I forgot, hair and makeup or wardrobe was one of those departments, and I just couldn't believe it. So I think when and the family that had done it, or put the money in, they had just had a new baby. This was their savings. They wanted to really do the project. And
why would they put $225,000 into this movie?
You know what? They had the money. It was something that they wanted to do. This was before the market crash. Things were flourishing and prospering all around. And I think they just felt like this was their time, They had no idea that it was going to go this way. And I think usually most people don't.
Yeah, right. Of course.
The things that could go wrong on a film set on an hourly basis.
Minute by minute.
Exactly. Yeah, the minute by minute is absolutely is pretty big. So I think when I was offered the opportunity to take it on, I think I just went in and I just locked everything down. And I was needed to go, what do we need? What don't we need? And I think my Robert Townsend instincts really kicked in at that point. It was really like, okay, what's free? What do we have to pay for? Who do we need? Who do we do not need? Like I kind of then became very, I was the no guy, which I hate being the no guy, but I think in this scenario, the one thing that I did first was collect all of the information. Mm-hmm. And when I figured out where the negative came from, which was paying certain people this lump sum of amount that was unnecessary, a lot of things also, this huge SAG deposit because they had messed up on tracks. And SAG is very delicate, as all unions are, so they had put the film under TV contracts versus feature film, which then SAG was already like, no, something's wrong with this picture. We need a full deposit of all talent. So it was just like, whoa. It was right when the Red camera came out, the very first one. So
workflow was beautiful back then.
I'll tell you what, that experience, the camera would burn out.
Sure.
And again, shooting in the sun. This was again another scenario where I shot more time.
Overheated. Sure.
And you couldn't take it to the camera house and exchange it. You had to then wait for a technician to come out to make sure that you didn't do anything wrong, that it was really a burn or something happened with the actual camera before they would even exchange it. So
that's the bloody edge of technology.
Yes, and oh god, I mean, that experience with that camera, which we didn't even need, by the way.
Sure.
That was another that filmmakers always do is they convince executive producers or financiers or whoever they're working with.
It's the best.
Yeah, and it's like, if you know what you're doing, you can do it with an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I think on that film, I really locked everything down. I had to dig deep in all of my resources and what I learned from the Robert Townsends of the world, and also, started to, there's something that I do. I don't do it as brutally as I did then, but I kind of just made everybody beg for it. Mm-hmm. I need this. No, you don't. Find a way. Like, use your imagination. You have a mind. You're creative. Give me a solution that doesn't cost $1. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, I learned very quickly how to use, you can tell when someone, a crew member, needs the dollar or they just want it because it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I did. I got that film. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that film, I did I remember the director producer wanting like more of his money up front, and I was like, absolutely not. You're the last person that's going to get a paycheck. You put yourself in the situation. I'm here to fix it. You're the last person that's going to ask me for a paycheck, because crew comes first and people's being fed comes first. So yeah, I had to lock everything down specifically and get to the point on how to get from day to day on that.
So you basically became the parent. The parent came in and cleaned everything up.
100%. And I had a lot of disgruntled kids.
I mean, look, I worked on a project once that was $1 million budget with big stars in it. By the time they got to the director set himself up in a house, like almost a mansion style house for the shoot, and pre-production, post-production. He got a car. He basically was living the life. He spent all the money up front for talent, and for production was like, on $1 million budget, all of production was basically like maybe a quarter, maybe.
Oh my god!
And then wait, post. That's when I got involved. Post had Post had, I don't know, I think maybe 30 or 40 for all of Post. And they shot on a mini DV camera.
Oh, wow.
They shot on the DVX 100A with major, decent stars, people who you would recognize if I said their names. And it was, I was just shocked at the, kind of like this, the director who just felt like, hey, this is how I'm going to roll. And I'm like, wow. And the movie obviously suffered.
I think, God.
We all have stories. We all have those stories.
We all have stories. And I think, because we can relate, it's bone chilling.
Yeah. God.
It's just like, oh God.
Yeah, that poor guy will never get his $1 million back. It was 1.1 or something like that. He'll never get his money back. The guy who invested in that movie. Never, ever, ever get his money back.
Oh God. And actually going back to that, something that I learned also from Robert Townsend was you treat people's money like it's your own.
Yeah.
Like you guard that money and you protect it and you treat it like it's your own, every single dollar. And you do your best 100%. Production and elements, can sometimes things can come up that were so unexpected. You want to just curl up into a ball and die, but that was that one main point of view is every dollar, everything, would you spend it if it was your own money? And if the answer is no, or if you have even a slight pause, do not spend it in that area.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No. I mean, I got to get Robert on the show, man. He keeps bringing him up.
He's pretty great. He's fantastic. I learned a lot from him.
Yeah, he's one of my heroes from Hollywood Shuffle. I mean, what he did with Hollywood Shuffle was, because I started coming up around that time, and he was that story before Steven Soderbergh, Robert Rodriguez, Kevin Smith, Quentin Tarantino. Before that, the Sundance Gang came out. Robert was there before. He was there only probably by about 3 or 4 years earlier, but it's still just amazing, his story. And so anyway, when you go to tackle a low budget film, man, what is your point of view from the budgeting standpoint? Like someone gives you a low budget script and they go, look, I've got $250,000. I got $100,000 to make this action movie. What do you do?
What I do is I'll read the script. I have an interesting process on how I read the script. First, I read it as an audience member, as just a film lover, filmmaker point of view, with all the characters and everything, and just get the story and get everything. Then I go through and read just the descriptions, locations, just go through. I skip all dialogue, all characters, all that. And, I've gotten to a point where I can very well tell what's it going to really take, what's realistic. And also red flags will pop up based on certain scenes or actions or sequences or things. And I go, okay, I mark them all the way down, and then have a conversation after that with the director and go, okay, so these things, if you did them regularly, it does not fit in the budget. It's actually not even a possible situation. So what were you thinking when you wrote these scenes, or you wanted, or you chose to do this project for this budget? So I can start to understand where the director's coming from, right? And so then if he has a solution, he's like, oh, I already thought about all of that. This is how I plan on doing it, whether it's through post or certain movie magic scenarios or certain elements or shooting in a specific way or certain things. Very rarely does it happen. What I usually get is like, we'll figure out in post, which is such a cliche. I 100% try almost to never say that, because I just know it's so wrong. It's just so wrong to do that to the post team, or to even think that you can do that, because if it's not shot on screen, post can only do so much.
Even with all the money in the world, and anytime I'm on a set, I tell everybody the only person allowed to say I'll fix it in post is me, because I'm fixing it in post.
There you go, and that's true. That is totally correct. That's 100% correct. And so, so then so after going through the scripts, marking out the elements that are doable or not doable, I talked to the director. I found out how he was thinking of doing these moments or these scenes. And if I feel, if I'm satisfied with how he chooses to execute that, then I have a conversation with him, and usually actually him and the DP to be the person that's going to actually be shooting what the director's saying.
Right.
Because I want to get the DP's reaction and look and or comments based on that. Because the DP could be like, he's crazy. There's no way to do that. So after getting all that information, I then go, okay, this is a doable thing and this is how it's going to go. And I hold them accountable to that. Then what I also then do is create a plan B. And I go, okay, so let's say that's the ideal situation. We're going to go ahead and, my job is also to be the cheerleader and to be the person that motivates them and keeps them excited to be doing this as well as it is for myself. So then I go, okay, that's fantastic. This is awesome. Let's go for it. Okay. So also plan B. Let's say we have other scenarios or things come up or running behind schedule or whatever the elements or situations are. What are going to be the other solutions? And then at that point, it's also my job to come up with solutions that don't take away from the story or the message, but to provide solutions and different scenarios to help solve any problems. And I always keep all of those in my back pocket because it's the director and the DP and the crew's job to go in full gung-ho with, total Braveheart, all for one for all, and it is my job to do that as well, but then also get ready to have their back.
Mm-hmm. That's basically a great line producer to do something like that. Yeah, and as a director, a lot of times, line producers are basically one of your generals on the field. Without question, the DP, the line producer, all those guys, and if you don't have a good line producer, it could all spiral out of control very, very quickly.
100%. And I think what I've been around very few line producers in the same room because obviously we're like unicorns. Everybody's set or working.
That's right. You are. I never see. Every once in a while, you're just like, oh, is that? Oh, there they are. They're usually in an office somewhere taking care of shit. Yeah.
I think so. One of the misconceptions, at least from my point of view, or at least with myself, is because of Robert Townsend and because of the background that I have, I'm very creative. And being an actor and I've written projects, I come from a very creative point of view. So I don't always look at the numbers. I'm very flexible with the numbers. I know where to put them or like quote unquote hide them to just keep it as a pocket. Because if I see a department's needing more than expected, I know what to do. But it's also really being creative and being part of that team. Like you have to be one with your director, with your DP, with your crew. And I like to move around the set a lot. I like to kind of go from department to department to see how everybody's doing, make sure everybody's, they don't have any concerns or worries or there's nothing negative happening. Because that helps the process. I think when I've encountered line producers that are just all about the numbers and all about the budget, it's not.
Can't be that way.
No, it hinders the project and it's a bummer. I've heard people before they've met me, people stiffen up and they're like, okay, here comes a line producer. Oh my God, he's about to tell us what we can't do. And it's like,
right.
Well, not necessarily. Like, if you're being an idiot, that's yes, I have to.
That's your job. That's your job.
Yeah. But I'm not, my job is to really come up with solutions and to keep everybody motivated and excited and have the vision that you want as close as possible or 100% nailing it, But I also prepare people in the pre-production end with the reality of what's doable. And, like on my last film, one thing that I like to do is be transparent. I'm very transparent with my crew and everybody. And I even show them the budget. I'm like, look, this is where things are at. This is what you guys wanted. This is what you guys told me you could do. This is where we're at. Things change. I have no problem ever taking, faults in anything that I've misdone or miscalculated or whatever. I also like to show that I'm human, just like everybody else. And I think that also then they realize, oh, he's part of us. Versus a lot of line producers can just be like, the budget is this golden chalice that's like held in secrecy, and no one's able to look at it.
And it's rigid. Yeah, it can't be.
It's not. And I think once and they don't know that. So I think once you walk everybody through, the director, the DP, all your keys. And you let them know that you're part of their team and you're there to help them do their job the best that they can because their name's on the project, their work is on screen, and you're there to take all of the hits, which is another thing that that's my job. My job is to take all of the hits from everybody, including your executive producers, so they don't come and attack my set or my crew members or my director. I think that's where they it's a big asset. And I think all of that. So basically, a long-winded answer is I just prepare everybody and I give them the facts up front. And I also give them the whys. Not like a parent where like, that just can't be done because I said so or because it's impossible. And I don't mock anybody or laugh at them. I just go, look, this can be done because of this. This requires this kind of permit. This kind of permit requires this because you're using this requires, these amount of police officers in fire department, or we need extra stunt people because of this. This thing right here requires a special rig. And I give them all of the information. So then they go, oh, I get that. Let me help you now find a solution for that. Or sometimes I find a lot of directors and DPs go, you know what, let's find a different way to do it so it doesn't even give anybody a headache. And I also then explain to them, look, guys, this is going to take extra time, which then puts your crew with extra work. And, we can go into overtime. And I don't like to do that to the crew because it's not fair to them because they're doing physical manual labor here with all the lights and everything. And they always find solutions for themselves. So that's usually how I handle a lot of low budget projects that have more on paper than is realistically allowed.
Which is generally mostly all the projects. So what advice would you give a filmmaker just starting out?
Oh, wow. Wow. I mean, I consider myself to still be just starting out.
Well, you're a little in the journey of filmmaking. You're a little bit ahead of someone just coming in. So, what would you give that advice?
I would tell a filmmaker, don't underestimate story and character and minimal locations. I would say don't underestimate minimal locations and the magic and the power that great characters and great stories have, because then you can maximize your budget. Perfect. Honestly, I think one of the most perfect films that I think out there that was done in that sense was Reservoir Dogs. I mean, man. You know what I mean? It's like and it's a suspense, it's a thriller, and you have a certain amount of characters, but it's kind of contained, and you know what I mean? So I think that's what I would tell a first-time filmmaker or a young filmmaker coming in, as well as, write with things that you can get to increase the quality of your film. Whether it's your parents' home, your own car. A perfect example is, my wife's son just did his first short film with some friends, and that's exactly what he did. And I have to say, I was beyond impressed. I was like, my God, this is, they knew what they could get for free, what they wanted to get for free, and where the money had to go. And it shows on screen. It's not the most complex all over the place film, but it's so well done. Like I'm proud. Like I'm stoked that a young filmmaker was able to really do it that way. So I think that's what I would for young filmmakers is maximize what you have, minimize locations, and yeah, and never never assume, because this happens all the time, that's just going to be a quick shot.
It's a quickie. 3 hours later. 3 hours later.
That nonstop, oh, it's just a really quick shot. It's like, oh God,
it's not on the schedule, but it's just real quick. It'll be fine. Bring in the dolly. We're just gonna lay this dolly track down real quick.
God,
real quick. When you hear the term, we're gonna lay down this dolly track real quick. There's a problem.
Yes, dolly and car mount.
Oh God, car mount.
When you hear dolly and car mount, I mean, I think it's just. It's going to be one of those days.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Communication can handle almost everything and anything. Like communication with respect and integrity and really, really understanding as best as you can the other person's point of view. Because I think whether it's in life or in the film industry, people can be very arrogant or like, what do you mean you don't understand what I'm saying? What do you mean you can't do that? Or why are you doing it that way? Oh my God, get out of my way. Let me handle it. I think, I found to be successful in life and in the film TV industry by communicating and being specific and understanding others' communication, especially when there's an upset. And I think they really, really, really will value that. And it just takes you it takes you further in life.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Now, what are the 3 of your favorite films of all time?
Oh, wow. I heard you ask this question in your previous podcasts, and so I was thinking about it. Let's see. Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
Wow. There's so many. I would say Scarface.
Okay. Of course, the most famous Cuban of all time is Italian.
Yeah, right. That's amazing. Gosh, God, there's so many. I know I'm gonna be kicking myself for this, but I would then have to just say, Good Will Hunting.
I love Good Will Hunting. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one with the late great Robin Williams.
Right. Yes. Oh God, that was so sad.
That movie in general is just such a it's almost perfection in the way that story was told.
It is, and I think actually perfect example. That's a perfect example of another great film where they maximized. I mean, what they had, and granted, you could say, oh, you had Robin Williams and the unknowns of Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, but the story, and it's like he's a janitor, happens to be a brilliant, and it's just it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
just, and I think I don't know, for me was the beginning of, I think that was when I realized I can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me it was Robert Rodriguez's movies like Desperado and Mariachi. That's the point where I said, "Oh, I think I can do this."
Right. Yeah. Well, those were. I mean, I was blown away on his ability to make those happen for what he had available. So
yes. Insane. So, listen, where can people find you?
Oh wow.
Not your home address. Just
I'm on, let's say the Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. It's Sevier Crespo. or SevierCrespo.com. It's kind of my page with some of my work and a little bit of my bio and things like that. And then on social media, it's Sevier Crespo, A to B.
Sevier, man, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I really appreciate you dropping so many knowledge bombs today.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
I tell you guys, having a good line producer is imperative on these on productions, man. I've had bad line producers and I've had amazing line producers. My line producer on my last project I just did with Legendary and Nerdist was Paul Silver, and Paul was amazing. He was really, really great. And just got everything done for me. I didn't have to worry. And the sign of a good line producer, speaking from a director's point of view, is not having to worry. Just knowing that when you get on set, everything's going to be there for you, and you don't have to worry that he's taken everything and put everything in place so you've got what you need to do your job as a director. So it's so imperative. And I can tell you I'll tell you one quick story of a bad one I had, where literally a day before production of this thing I was shooting, the line producer, and I use that term extremely loosely, hadn't gotten cameras, trucks, things that we needed to get things just going, food. He just dropped the ball so many places where I had to stop prepping for my directing and actually had to put on a producer's hat and actually go out and get all this stuff. I had to go out and get the trucks. It was insane. This is early days of my career, but you learn to make sure you hire good line producers because they can save your butt. Trust me. So hope you guys got a lot out of that episode. And guys, if you like the show, please spread the word. Spread the word as much as you can. Share our links, and if you can, head over to iTunes. Or you can just go to filmmakingpodcast.com and leave us an honest review, hopefully a good one. But it really helps us out a lot, and I want to get as many filmmakers this information as humanly possible. So I need your help with that, guys. And I want to give you a This Is Meg update. We will hopefully be releasing it sometime in the summer on iTunes, and we are working through Distribber to do that, and we will be doing a video, small little video documentary on my experience using Distribber and going through the entire process from launch strategies to everything. We're going to go down to the Distribber headquarters, shoot some stuff, post some stuff. It's going to be awesome. So I'm going to give you guys as much behind the scenes of me launching This Is Meg on iTunes as humanly possible. Don't forget to head over to distribber.com/indie film hustle if you want to get your film on iTunes, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, any of those platforms. These guys can help you out, and I'll be showing you what I'll be doing with them in the future. And also, I have a bunch of things cooking for the rest of this year. I'm working on some big stuff, some big projects, some big updates for Indie Film Hustle as well, and some new stuff that I'm working on, some new launches, some new things. I know I'm being very cryptic here, but just keep an eye out because I have a lot of cool stuff coming for the tribe. So thank you guys again so much for your support, and I really, really appreciate all those emails and Facebook messages and Twitter messages that you guys send me on a daily basis. I'm so glad that my hard work that I do here at Indie Film Hustle is inspiring you guys, and you're finding value in what I do with Indie Film Hustle, and it does keep me going. So thank you guys so much, and I really wish you guys all the best in any production and any journey that you guys are on. So thank you again. Oh, and by the way, if you want to get links to anything we talked about in the show, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/155 for the show notes of this episode. And as always, keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.